What would you do if the place you called home, your sanctuary, was suddenly claimed by strangers wielding rules you never agreed to? That's where my story begins, on a quiet summer morning at my ranch, where the lake sparkled like a sheet of glass under the Texas sun. My name is Ethan Caldwell, and that Lake Me Lake was the heart of the 50 acres I'd poured my life into. It was my refuge, bought with every penny of my savings after years of grinding in a soul-sucking city job. But peace, it turns out, is a fragile thing when a homeowners association gets involved. I'd moved to Willow Creek Ranch 3 years ago, craving solitude after my wife, Clara, passed. The lake was her dream, a place she'd sketched in her journals, filled with fish and framed by wildflowers. After she was gone, I made it real for her. That morning, I was casting a line into the water, the soft plop of the lure breaking the silence. The air smelled of damp earth and freedom. Then I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A white SUV rolled up, and out stepped Karen Whitaker, the self-appointed queen of the Willow Creek HOA. Her lips were pursed, her clipboard clutched like a weapon. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass, "you're violating HOA regulations. Fishing is restricted to approved members only." I stared, dumbfounded. My lake, my land, my fish. "Karen," I said, keeping my tone even, "this is my property. I don't answer to your HOA." Her eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." She whipped out her phone, dialed, and within 20 minutes, a sheriff's cruiser pulled up. Deputy Mark Hensley stepped out, looking as tired as I felt. "Ethan, what's this about?" he asked, glancing at Karen, who was already launching into a tirade about community standards and unauthorized activities. I explained calmly. The lake was mine, deeded and paid for, and the HOA had no jurisdiction over my ranch. Mark nodded, checked my paperwork, and told Karen she was mistaken. Her face turned the color of a ripe tomato, but she didn't back down. "This isn't over," she hissed before storming off. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next week, signs appeared around my lake. "Willow Creek, HOA property, no trespassing." My blood boiled. I tore them down, but they kept reappearing, each one bolder than the last. Then came the letters, stuffed in my mailbox, demanding I pay HOA dues for lake maintenance. I ignored them. I wasn't part of their gated community, and my ranch predated their subdivision by decades. But Karen and her cronies weren't just annoying, they were relentless. They decided my lake was their trophy, a shiny addition to their manicured empire. One evening, I caught 2 kids sneaking onto my property, fishing rods in hand. They were teenagers, nervous but defiant. "Mrs. Whitaker said we could fish here." The taller one, Jake, stammered. "Said it's community property now." I sent them home with a warning, but my gut twisted. Karen wasn't just coming for my lake. She was rewriting the rules, convincing others it was hers to give. That's when I met Lila Monroe, a twist in this tale I didn't see coming. Lila was a real estate lawyer, new to Willow Creek, and she knocked on my door one night with a bottle of bourbon and a stack of documents. "Heard you're having HOA trouble," she said, her southern drawl soft but her eyes sharp. She'd moved to escape her own messy divorce, she later admitted, and had no love for HOAs. Over a drink, she showed me surveys and deeds proving my land was untouchable. But she also found something odd. A recent filing suggesting the HOA was trying to annex my lake under an obscure community benefit clause. "They're playing dirty," Lila said. "We need to fight dirtier." Lila became my ally, my confidant, and, if I'm honest, a spark of something I hadn't felt since Clara. We spent nights poring over legal papers, her laughter cutting through my grief like sunlight. She dug into Karen's past, uncovering a history of strong-arming neighbors in other towns. Karen wasn't just a busybody. She was a predator, using her HOA power to bully and extort. Lila's plan was simple: expose Karen at the next HOA meeting, armed with proof that my lake was mine and her claims were fraudulent. The meeting was a circus. Karen stood at the front of the community center, her voice dripping with fake concern for our shared resources. When I stood to speak, The room went quiet. I laid out the deeds, the surveys, the truth. Lila followed, her voice steady as she detailed Karen's overreach. The crowd murmured, some nodding, others glaring. Then came the twist. Jake, the teenager I'd caught fishing, stood up. Mrs. Whitaker told us Ethan's a liar, he said, his voice shaking. Said he stole the lake from the community. The room erupted. Karen had been spreading lies, turning neighbors against me. I thought we'd won. The HOA board promised to investigate, and Karen's face was a mask of fury. But victory was fleeting. 2 nights later, I woke to the smell of smoke. My barn, where I kept Clara's journals and my fishing gear, was ablaze. By the time the fire trucks arrived, it was gone. The sheriff called it arson but had no proof. I knew who was behind it. Karen's SUV was spotted nearby that night, but she had an alibi, and the case stalled. Lila urged me to keep fighting, but something in me broke. The lake, once my sanctuary, felt tainted. Every ripple reminded me of Clara's sketches. Now ash. Every cast of my line felt like defiance against a machine I couldn't beat. Karen's HOA kept pushing new fines, new signs, new threats. Lila found evidence they'd bribed a county official to fudge property lines, but the official retired and disappeared before we could act. In the end, I sold the ranch. Not to the HOA, but to a developer who promised to keep the lake private. It wasn't about the money. It was about denying Karen her prize. The day I left, I cast one last line into the lake, watching the lure sink. Lila stood beside me, her hand brushing mine. You did what you could, she said, but it didn't feel like enough. Karen won, not by law, but by wearing me down, by burning away the last pieces of Clara I had left. I moved to a small cabin in Montana, far from HOAs and their petty wars. Lila visits sometimes, and we talk about fighting the good fight, but the fire in me is gone. The lake was more than water, it was Clara's dream, my promise to her. Karen didn't just trespass on my land. She trespassed on my heart. And that's a wound no deed can fix. ND.